Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good to see you guys. What's new? What's new? Anything good?
Not a ton new here in Arkansas. The weather's warming up big time. I think we've been over 80 degrees the last couple days, which is a stark difference to like literally 4 days ago. It was like 25 degrees, and now we're
Oh,
back up over 80. So it's just that classic I just swing you get in this part of the country.
those spring temperature like swings are nuts. And I remember from living on the East Coast that like 25 degrees when it's humid is so freaking cold. It just like you can't wear enough layers. It's so brutal. I really dislike it. I'm very accustomed to the dry weather out here. Um, but yeah, we've had some weird weather this week too, with a lot of like rain, drizzle, snow, drizzly runs, wet runs. Um, but you know, the good thing is maybe like the mountains around here won't burn down this summer. Um, so the more moisture, the better. Every time it rains, I was talking about this with an athlete in the logs this week. It's like every time it rains, yeah, it's kind of a pain. You're like, man, stinks to get out in the rain. But then you look around and you're like, we really need this rain. Like, you know, I'm going to show some gratitude for the rain today because without it, you have really big fire issues. Um, we were only at like 70% of snowpack average for the year out here, which is really, really low. So that brings the danger up higher and the drought and everything. I think actually the Front Range just finally got out of drought, which is kind of a nice thing. But here where we live, oh, it's super dry. But the trees just bloomed yesterday, like overnight. So it's a little bit greener, which is really cool.
I keep forgetting that Colorado, California have had like really bad issues with forest fires the last couple years. And you talking about it just now, I'm like, that feels like a century ago, but that was like last summer. Oh my gosh.
There was actually, so I'm in Western South Dakota, and there was a pretty big fire west of us, west of Rapid City, just a couple of months ago,
Oh
like
my God.
at the end of March. And I think it's just like, if that's any indication of what's to come, it's going to be a pretty awful fire season.
Um,
Yeah. It's, oh, how is the transition getting back to South Dakota, Kristen? You guys are all like settled in and happy to be back.
Yeah, we're eloping on Monday.
What? Oh man, that's awesome.
Because planning a wedding is silly. So yeah, good to be back. Well, it'll just be our parents and us, and it's been good. I mean, we're settled. Spearfish is cool. We went to the first live music show that Spearfish has had in 14 months last night. It was this like patchwork, folksy thing, which is cool. But yeah, Spearfish it's a really cute town. It's like Boulder before Boulder became Boulder,
Yeah.
it's settled in like the mountains of South Dakota, the mountains, the Black Hills of South Dakota. It's just like, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I miss Colorado. Obviously, I miss you guys, but it's nice to be close to family. Watching my niece and nephews kind of run around. Like we're going to my nephew's first baseball game this weekend, so it'll be kind of cool to be close enough to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool to be around family. I think that that's such a special thing and something that when you get to be in your 30s, you start to reappreciate as like a adult. I
Yeah.
remember, my parents when they moved to Colorado, and I finally got to start seeing them again. And I think 2 Christmases ago was like the first Christmas that I had with my family for 10 years. and now I never miss a Christmas or a holiday. It's nice to have family close by, especially, you know, after the pandemic and things like that, where a lot of people weren't able to see their families, and the kind of fragility, at least for my parents being like in their upper 60s. Um, I don't know. It just feels a little bit better to have them close by.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what it is. It's just like when I was in Colorado or when I was in Portland, it was like the proximity, it just felt different. And now like I don't live next door to them by any means. There's still a 4-hour drive, but
Yeah.
it's doable, you know? So.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm 3 hours from my parents. I feel like that's like the perfect distance.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you can't stop by for a visit unannounced, but
yeah. I always say that it's like far enough away that my mom's not here every weekend, but close enough that like if I need a mom day, I can get one.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're going to get the family together. Big celebration. Do you guys have a registry? We need to send you a wedding present.
We don't have any of that.
Come
so
on, you
the
need
next
one
time
for
we see you
REI.
guys, we'll just throw out some high fives and hopefully hugs, because maybe we'll all be vaccinated by then. We get our second vaccines on Tuesday, so
Nice.
first couple of days of marriage will be with fever and chills.
Yeah. Oh boy, I'm getting my second vaccine tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm home alone. Zoe's in Portland.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know
tomorrow.
how your symptoms go, because I'm kind of nervous about the second one, just based on what I've heard. But it's not gonna obviously not gonna stop me from getting it, but
yeah,
interested.
I'm expecting it to hit hard. I'm gonna I get it at 9 in the morning, and I'm gonna try real hard to get up and do my run before. But the last time I got my vaccine, I just couldn't get up on a Saturday morning at 6 to go do a 15-mile run. So I ended up not running for 3 days, and then all of a sudden my runs were amazing the week after.
That's
sometimes
so
COVID rest, vaccine rest.
Yeah, start that hashtag.
Yeah. Vaccine rest. I would like to see more athletes. Let me know ahead of time when you're going to get the vaccine, because it's really important to account for that. Guys should definitely be resting.
Yeah.
Well, Kristen and Drew and I today, guys, we've got some questions. Just excited to get into this. And yeah, we'll just get right into it. Where should we start? All right. We'll start with the first question. We'll just go down the list today. All right, cool. I live on the East Coast, Connecticut, and I tend to run many of the same trails because I find it's sometimes hard to know what to expect from a new trail. Sometimes the trails aren't the best maintained for running. Do you know any resources, websites, or apps that are helpful to find local running trails? I've used all trails before for hiking with my boyfriend and for mountain bike rides. So I often end up on the same trails. However, I know that there's more out there. What do you recommend? So, yeah, I think I'll start by answering this. If you guys don't have Trail Run Project or Mountain Bike Project, I would recommend those apps. I've used those before. I think it's very helpful when you're going to an area that you're unfamiliar with. Being able to look on Mountain Bike Project or on Trail Run Project and seeing the kind of the trails that are located near you, getting a little bit of a description on those trails, also getting the vert, so what you're getting into. Is this going to be a steep run or is it a flat run? Is it 4 miles out and 4 miles back, or is it a loop? Can I link trails up to get more mileage? I found that to be really helpful. And yeah, last year I did a cross country road trip and I used that to run in Kansas and Missouri and found some really good trails in a part of the world where I thought there wouldn't be like any good trail running. And so that would be my recommendation. And often people, you know, on those apps, the trails are rated like on a ski mountain. So you have like green, blue, and black. So green is obviously like the easiest trails, real smooth, probably not a lot of vert. Blue is a little bit more technical, a little steeper. And then black diamond is probably like mountain running-esque or real technical trails. So it's pretty cut and dry. And sometimes there's pictures and stuff on there. So I've really found that helpful. Kristen, you recommended another app called Trail Forks. You want to tell us about that one?
Yeah, I use both Trail Forks and Trail Run Project. I've been using Trail Forks more often, just because there aren't a lot of trail runners in South Dakota, I'm realizing. So Trail Forks is, my boyfriend uses it for mountain biking, and it connects all of the trails. So there's a lot of overlap between the two, but I've noticed that Trail Forks has more established trails on the app. So it's, you know, it's very similar to Trail Run Project. It's also rated the same way, and you can comment, add photos, do all that. So I think if you have one or the two, you're in a good spot to just kind of explore. And you can download different areas. So if you're out of service, you don't have to worry about your phone not working or not having internet. So you can download entire states or entire countries ahead of time, which is really nice. I think you can do that with Trail Run Project as well.
Listening to you guys talk about apps is so interesting because I swear I'm 35 years old, but I have like the technology capabilities of an 85-year-old. So I still do like the old school, like if I know I'm going somewhere, I'm like, well, let me look up, see if there's any run shops in that town and go talk to the young guy and find out where the locals run. And I kind of do it that old school way. So learning about these apps is like blowing my mind right now.
Okay. I love that idea though, because
so wholesome.
when you like when you like are really connecting with people in that area who are out there running, you know, like every day, you're going to get the best data, right? So I think the caveat to like using these apps is sometimes what one person says is a great trail or a great place to go run is not what another person might think is a great place or, you know, to go run. And I think case in point, like where we live in Carbondale, there's a run called Albany Kittle, which is, you know, rated on Trail Run Project. It's like one of those like diamond runs, and a diamond run is it's like a gem. It's like the best you can find. It's so epic. And we went there and it's terrible. It's the worst run in the valley. It's too steep to be runnable, so you might as well call it a hike. It's overgrown once you run more than 3 miles. It's just like not a good run, and it's way overrated on the app. And so like you would never know that unless you were like to go to Independence Running and ask, you know, someone working there like, hey, how's that Albany Kittle? I saw that it's rated like really high on Trail Run Project, and they'd be like, well, actually it's pretty steep, so you might want to try something flatter, go to this area.
I think that's the problem with the apps though, is like, you know, if Anton Kripicka is rating the second Flatiron in Boulder, it might be 97% runnable for him. For the general population, it is not that. So I think when you're looking at these, it's good to take those sorts of things into account. We've had an inside joke forever about things being like 94 or 97% runnable because of that app. And there are a lot of trails where you get to them and you're like, what in the world? Who rated this?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So take it with a grain of salt, but it's good to know, good to have when you're looking for trails.
Totally. And I think too, like for Zoe and I in the summer, we really try to go out and adventure at least once or twice every month. So usually that means like, we drive somewhere and camp somewhere that we've never been or run before. And we really rely on like mountain bike project or trail run project to see, the trails in the area. Oh, how is the trail to this 14er rated, etc. And then, you get like the basics. And then from there, you just have to accept whatever conditions you're going to encounter out there. And make the most of it. That's the part about adventuring. That can be really fun and also sometimes like super frustrating if it's a more technical trail or like there's snow at the top and nobody said that there was snow recently or like all of these things that could happen. But again, like you're in for the adventure. So, be open-minded. And just take each thing as it comes, try to embrace it, know that a great day out there involves a lot of ups and downs, and like your adventure doesn't have to go perfectly. And yeah, I mean, at least that's the way that I frame it, and I know that that's can be different for each athlete, but it's a privilege to be able to go out and adventure and run on new trails. And I think that it's our perspective, how we interpret those runs. So if we're saying that was a bad adventure, that was a bad run, that's a matter of your perspective, and you could easily change that mindset.
A lot of here in Arkansas, a lot of like the most, I guess, nice trails to run are associated with state parks. And if you go to, I guess, each state park's website, they not only provide really detailed maps of trails, but give really, I feel, accurate representations of the footing and the elevation and just the ease of being able to hike, run. I mean, there's people mountain bike, horseback riding, like all kinds of stuff. And so I've always found that to be a pretty useful tool as well.
Yeah, right. Like everybody forgets with all the apps to just like go to the state park website, look at the trail map. Oh yeah, Arkansas definitely has some really amazing trails. I would recommend, actually, if anybody is kind of in that corner of the world, go explore. The mountain bike trail networks that have been built out there are extensive and actually really great for running.
Well, it's pretty crazy. We've got billionaires here in Northwest Arkansas. Thanks, Walmart, hashtag. But they love the young billionaires, the guys that are my age. They love mountain biking, and so it seems like every year they're like, "Oh, here's another 50 miles of single track trail." Like every year, so we've got hundreds and hundreds of miles of just like sweet, cool, new, freshly carved trail through just the beautiful Ozarks up here. Highly recommend vacationing to Northwest Arkansas. Nowhere else in Arkansas. Trust me, don't want to go there, but Northwest Arkansas is pretty sweet.
Bring your bug spray. Cool. All right. Let's go on to our second question of the morning. This is one that we've seen before, but always good to touch on again. When do you recommend foam rolling or using a massage gun? Should this be directly after a hard workout? Should I wait a few hours? Should this be done on rest days and on non-training days? What's the benefit of doing this before a workout? Drew, maybe I'll throw this to you to start, because I remember you had a good answer for this one the last time.
Yeah, I know. I always feel weird answering questions because a lot of these questions come from like my personal experience and me working closely with physical therapists. I know typically when Zoe's here, she gives like, well, I did some research and these are what the studies are saying. But as it pertains to, I guess, foam rolling, when to foam roll or when to use a massage gun, I think that you can get a more productive massage after your workout or after your run when your muscles have kind of loosened up and everything's, good to go. It doesn't mean you can't do before, but your body will end up being a little more tight. The massage won't be as productive. And you probably shouldn't foam roll or massage for very long before a run. So if you had to pick one or the other, I definitely recommend massaging post run. And then the difference between, I guess, foam rolling and a massage gun are huge. Like the purposes, most people foam roll, they're using it on, you know, calves or hamstrings, glutes, big time IT band massage. When a massage gun is more like the floss to your toothbrush, you can get in, fine tune areas, specific heads of your gastroc or your soleus or whatever. Like you can really, really pinpoint very specific areas. And then when it comes to foam rolling, I guess the question commented on like, do you do it on training days or rest days? I mean,
Yeah.
all days, like any day that you are walking around or get out of bed is a day that you should be taking care of yourself. That self-care, that PT. It's not foam rolling because you ran the day before. It's foam rolling to get yourself ready for the next run. And so that's kind of how I like to frame all of that.
I really like that. So I'm writing that down.
I like that too. Sometimes if I have, you know, for me personally, if I'm like really tight, or if I am worried about like my Achilles or something, and I have a heating pack around, I'll usually try to use, I'll use that before I get out the door, just to like help warm up the muscles. But then yes, absolutely everything Drew said, I am 1000% on board with.
Yeah, Kristen, I think that's a really good point to make. Using heat on muscles that are tight can be very, very helpful. This is something that we've talked about before, but athletes have a tendency to use very outdated protocol when dealing with muscles that hurt. And the first mistake that I see athletes make is to go straight for ice. Especially athletes who have having foot issues, or like issues with their lower legs, they go straight for the ice. And icing a muscle is going to make it tighter. It's going to make it much harder for you to loosen it up and warm it up to the point where you can go train on it. So when things are tight, couple rules: don't ice. Try heat, try very gentle. I like to start with some foam rolling before moving to static stretching. And again, if you're doing static stretching before a run, know that the science really tells us that that can actually limit a little bit of your ability to run well out there, because you need some muscle tension, and that to help you fire more rapidly and increase turnover and things like that. So stretch within, you know, that range of motion. I think it's much better to use a band and to do some like band work. Monster walks in various directions can really help, especially like warming up the lower legs, the hips, getting the glutes firing. That should be part of everybody's like pre-run routine. Maybe doing some calf raises once you've kind of rolled out your calves. And again, like you don't want to spend a lot of time rolling out, just enough to kind of get the blood and the circulation going there. And then you switch gears, you get into more of that active, I'm priming myself to go out on the run routine. Heat can definitely be a part of that. Again, like if you get back from a run and something is sore, I really wouldn't recommend icing it. It delays a natural inflammatory response. When that ice is worn off, your body is just going to inflame that area again. And so it's just doing that, but later.
I think also one thing to keep in mind is if you sprain an ankle, or if you, like I've had issues with an ACL, and what I learned from that was that movement is the best way to get things healing, because once you have that blood flow, like that blood flow is going to help heal that area. So I'm not saying go run on a sprained ankle. I'm saying do, you know, gentle exercises without the ice, like write your ABCs, write your name with your feet, you know, things like that, that keep the blood moving And you can do that with a heating pack on, but I think studies have shown that that's actually more effective than the old school, like rest, ice, compress, elevate. Like that is completely outdated at this point. So heat and movement are highly encouraged.
Yeah, totally. Kristen, I completely agree. I think that's really important. I really like the tip about, especially for like ankle injuries, for foot stuff, just working through, trying to mobilize your ankle. Also with foot stuff, you can try to keep your feet flat on the floor and raise each toe one at a time, or raise your big toes and then raise your other four toes. Just gently like starting to work. Some massage can really help too, like circulation and blood flow is really, really important, right? So like icing is going to restrict those things.
Yeah, and I think with icing too, you don't get the same range of motion that you do when your muscles are actually warmed up, and I think that's one of the most important things about that help healing is like getting your range of motion back. So if you can only like, if your flexion is 50% of what it normally is, like you got to work to get it back to 100%. And
that's my ankle flexion. It's so bad.
Right here.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend a little foam rolling too, even on your rest days. I wouldn't hammer yourself with the foam roller or the massage gun though before you get out. That can be detrimental to your muscles. I don't know if you guys have ever had a massage or like dry needling or something done by, a professional in those areas. But that can cause soreness, right? And then when you go out and you run, when you're sore, the quality of your run goes down. So again, like we're using these things mostly for recovery. And as Drew mentioned, it's very much a preparation kind of thing. And yeah, Rachel, MD, says that icing, does have a place, and I would completely agree. Again, I would say not to ice before a run, but if you have a certain protocol, you're working with your sports doctor or your PT, and you have a very specific protocol for your injury, always default to that. We're talking, very generally speaking here. Yeah, and stay, all this stuff is great if you stay on top of it, right? Like when we let these things go, often like little niggles start to appear, or that, minor bit of stiffness or limitation in range of motion, it just can get worse over time if you don't stay on top of it. So like all of this is routine based. 5-10 minutes a day is very, very helpful and pretty easy to accomplish. Something that I do to help me make sure that I get on the foam roller, because I have a bad habit recently of not doing it enough, is I put the foam roller next to the shower. So I see that and know, like, foam roll for 5 minutes before you get into the shower. And that really helps kind of like cue me in on like, don't rush to the shower so you can rush back to work. Do the 5 minutes of foam rolling. Like, you really need to do that to keep your feet healthy. Yeah, cool. Here is a great question. I'm going to let Kristen answer this one first. Does pineapple belong on pizza? Why not?
I love that this question, it's just like such a leading question that whoever sent this in obviously does not believe that pineapple belongs on pizza, but I believe that everything belongs on pizza, which is why it makes the best food in the entire world. So yes and no is my answer, but mostly yes.
Drew, what's your take on this very important topic?
Oh my gosh. So for years and years, for I guess like the first 30 years of my life, like I never ate pizza because I can't have dairy. And so I just always assumed that pizza it does have cheese on it, and I just couldn't have it. And then just recently started getting into like either pizza with no cheese or pizza with like cheese substitutes. And so for me right now, like pizza, generally speaking, like I don't know the rules. I just know that it's good, and that literally like it's just a it's a vessel for all food, and you can mix and match and do whatever. So pineapple, I've never had that on pizza, but it sounds like a solid slap in the face that I think I might enjoy.
All right. There are no rules when it comes to pizza. You heard it here first from Coach Kristen. I agree. No topping is off limits. It's all a matter of preference. I couldn't tell you when the last time I had pineapple pizza was, but I've definitely had it before. Might not be my favorite combination, but
still a combination.
Yeah. Don't people normally put ham? It's like a pineapple bacon or pineapple ham.
Yeah, the Canadian bacon, I think is what Pizza Hut calls it. But yeah, I mean, pineapple's great on its own. Pineapple's also great on pizza. I think, you know, when it comes to pizza, you do you. And if anyone gives you crap, just tell them they have to order their own pizza.
Yeah. And if you're not eating pizza, that's a problem. Please reach out to your healthcare provider. You gotta eat pizza. Could be dairy free, could be with vegan cheese, could be with regular cheese, could be with Canadian bacon. Pizza is important, especially after a race.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Zach said pineapple with jalapenos is a good combo, and I absolutely agree. I'm not a huge like spice fan, but I've had that combo before and it blew my mind.
Sweet and spicy. I think that's a Colorado. That must be like a Colorado. That's a Front Range pizza for sure.
Yeah, there's I think Boss Lady Pizza in Boulder on the hill has a really great pineapple jalapeno pizza.
That's awesome. All right. I care a lot about pizza, and you guys should too. All right. Let's get back to this. That was a running specific question. I'm just going to say. So here is another running specific question. What are some tips for running in exceptionally humid climates? The humidity in the Southeast can affect me just as much as the altitude in Colorado. Oh man, Drew Connor, what do you got? You're a humidity expert.
This is an awesome question because humidity doesn't, I mean, most of us suffer from it, except for, I guess, all you special people out west. But I moved to Arkansas from Las Vegas, and Vegas was, I mean, there's no humidity. It gets hot. Like it's not uncommon for the summertime to experience 115, 120 degrees temperatures. But in Arkansas, like it very rarely gets above 100, but the humidity is so high in the summertime that it literally feels like you can't breathe. And so when it comes to, I guess, trying to run in the humidity, you have to make sure that you're hydrated, making sure that your sodium, potassium intake leading up to the run is adequate. You have to go slow. Like you have to understand that it is going to like wear you down. And so unlike elevation in Colorado, where every now and then I find myself when I come visit, it's like I just have to like take an extra breath every now and then. With humidity, you can't escape it. It's always there. And so understanding that you're going to run slower, understanding that it's going to be a little tougher. And if you understand that, it's easier to cope with it when it happens. But just to give yourself grace, keep running, keep going, keep doing it, but just understand that it's going to take a little more out of you.
Yeah. Managing those expectations with regard to humidity is really important. I feel like every time I run in humid temperatures, it's just like 2 minutes in, it's like I just jumped in a swimming pool with my entire running kit on, shoes included. Like everything is soaked top to bottom, and I'm like such a heavy sweater to begin with that, you know, if I haven't paid attention to hydration and things like that, it's really easy because it's so wet to like forget that you need to drink. And then all of a sudden you're 90 minutes in and you're like, your perceived efforts going through the roof, your performance is dropping. So staying on top of that stuff is really important. I know it's actually a pretty big adjustment to go from running in Colorado to say like you have a race on the East Coast. And that's actually something that I've dealt with several times in my running career, is having like really, really good training in Colorado, feeling very fit, and then going to Arkansas or, you know, upstate New York or any of these other like really humid areas, and expecting to have like great performance, because I'm at lower elevation. But the denser air actually slows you down. And so you really need to adjust your expectation for that. Like, yes, you might be able to get in more oxygen, but you're going to have to put out a little bit more effort to maintain the same output levels, because the air literally makes you run slower. Rather inversely, if you go from being in a humid area to an area that is drier, say you go from Arkansas to, I don't know, low desert out west, maybe you're in Moab or I don't know, like Sedona area or something. It's not very high elevation, it's a little higher. So you might not feel the effects of the elevation change very much, but you are going to feel a bit quicker because the air isn't stopping you. So again, like some big points there, I think, are like staying hydrated, definitely pre-hydrating your runs and bringing hydration on your run, and also making sure that you replenish yourself and really focus on getting electrolytes in after the run. It's very hard for me, at least, to tell how much I've sweat, because within 2 minutes, I'm already so saturated that it's just like, I don't know how much water I lost out there. It's, you know, you just have to assume you lost a lot, and to make sure to drink to thirst.
And kind of like what TJ's alluding to also is when he's here, he sweats a lot and you see it on your body. And so wearing clothing that helps your body get that moisture off of you and dry, so that, or as dry as possible anyway, so that it can all work together, is really important. You see a lot of people want to wear less clothing, as little as possible, when it's really humid, and really that sounds nice because it's usually so hot and you just feel miserable. But if you can wear clothing, tends to be like nicer, high end, stay away from cotton related stuff. Just anything that helps get that moisture off of your body is going to be helpful too.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you're somebody who's going to be going from like a drier climate to racing, give yourself a few days if you can, before that race, to make the adjustment. I like athletes to think about, when they're changing climates for races, try to have at least 7 days, couple of days to ease in, especially if there's a time change, then a few days to run to get used to those conditions before race day. And then, you know, a day to rest and recover and do a shakeout. Really, really important, because, you know, your whole system can get thrown off by those changes in environment. Kristen, would you like to bring in any of your experience? I know you've raced all across the country.
Yeah, I don't deal well with humidity either. And I grew up along the Missouri River in South Dakota. And so like in the summers, it gets super hot, super humid. And I agree with Drew. It's like you have to drink to thirst, and you have to stay on top of your hydration game. Because even though it feels like you're running through water a lot of the time, like you need to make sure you have enough electrolytes. You're losing so much salt as well as water that it's really important to stay on top of your hydration game is what I will say. And I know that elevation typically affects me the same way humidity does. And so, you know, when I was talking to Zoe before she went to Portland, it was like she's running the Tillamook 50. And when you get trapped in those trees, like the humidity is just crazy out there, regardless of, you know, being at sea level, like it still feels like you're at altitude. So my advice to her was just, you know, make sure before your race, take a salt tab, make sure that you have enough electrolytes within your system that you can expel, because you're going to be sweating and just like getting more out than usual. And it's probably going to make you feel like garbage. So
that's a great point by Kristen. Salt tabs, like increasing your sodium intake is huge. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Oh man. And great advice for Zoe too. Because again, I think there's like always this like common misconception when you're, acclimated to 7,000 to 8,000 feet, like we just are all the time here. And even towards, the middle of summer being acclimated to 10 or 11,000 feet, it's very easy to kind of overestimate what your abilities are going to be when you go to lower elevation, and not, taking into account like electrolyte balance in a more humid environment, like not staying on top of that early in your, 48 hours before a race and your preparation before a race can be a limiting factor towards good performance. And I think, man, like those just I've done some runs in the Bay Area, and I feel like it's probably not even as humid as up in Portland, with just how wet that climate is. But when you're in those trees, you're just the humidity is so thick you can like literally see it, and you're soaked right away. So another like race tip would be to have a change of clothes for midway through the race. I would definitely recommend using Body Glide or a similar product on your feet to help prevent and keep your feet dry for blisters. Maybe changing out your shoes, socks, shorts, shirt. If I hate it when I get sweat in my eyes and stuff because I have to wear so much sunscreen. It's super annoying. So I, make sure that I have like several buffs to like wipe my face all the time. And just having those little extra things that keep you more comfortable out there can help keep your performance strong.
That was one thing that I definitely learned living in the Northwest for so long was I would have a buff on my head, like a headband, but I would also keep a separate buff around my wrist so that when the first buff like either got soaked through or if anything else happened, I had that additional buff to like wipe my face off or, use as a wow, words are hard, additional like towel, basically. Yeah. Just because when you do get salt in your eye or sunscreen in your eye, it just like, it has the ability to just, change like a good day into a really not great day.
So true.
It sucks.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm like thinking about it and I'm like, maybe we won't do an Arkansas trip this year. I think I might stay in the dry heat, but it depends on the forest fires.
Yeah.
All right. Caitlin asked a question very specific about electrolytes, having an issue with electrolytes that use stevia to sweeten them. To be very honest, I don't know of any electrolytes that use stevia as a sweetener. I have used Sword, Scratch, and Noon typically, and I don't believe they have stevia in them. So those might be three that you want to look into. And if you're having any specific issues with electrolyte balance, finding your balance, I would recommend one, experimenting with these things starting like 10 or 12 weeks before your race. You really want to dial in kind of the amount of sodium you need per hour to maintain performance out there. You want to start with those things very early on in the running season, because if you leave it to chance and to guesswork on race day, you could end up with some of the GI distress or a disbalance. If you've tried all of that and are running into roadblocks, Kylie Van Horn, Fly Nutrition, she is an expert with all of this stuff, and I would definitely recommend reaching out to her, setting up a consultation so she can help you break down all of the stuff that you've been working through, and then provide you with some good action steps towards developing a better hydration plan. And then we have a few other questions. Derek, okay, what about going from the humidity in the southeast to altitude? I'm going from Nashville to Silverton for a marathon in July. I think Zoe and I are going to be at that race, Derek. Maybe we'll get to see you there. And you're Okay, struggling over the acclimatization process. I would say one, it can be really helpful to run in really, really warm temperatures before race day to help build your blood volume. That's going to translate over to a little bit better performance at altitude. So
That will not be a problem at all, luckily. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest thing that you can do. Also, you know, general fitness is going to really help as well. So just making sure you stay consistent, you get your workouts in, build that fitness up. And then if you can get up to altitude a few days before, you know, obviously like most advantageous would be 2 weeks before, but if you can get there like 5 days before or 7 days before, or even 48 hours before, it's better than showing up on race day at altitude for the first time and then trying to race. So give yourself a chance, get a few runs in at altitude so you can feel like the difference between the breathing and stuff and know how to regulate your effort. And I think that's going to help you a ton. Again, like probably the biggest thing you can do is raise your blood volume by making sure that you're training in very, very warm conditions. You're probably going to really enjoy the dry heat, but again, that might throw off your hydration a little bit. So I would really recommend having like a strong hydration plan in place before race day. Cool. Let's try to get at least one more question in. Yeah. How about this question on shoes? This could be a good one for our shoe expert, Drew. Would you discuss the effects of running on different surfaces with different shoes? I'm talking more responsive versus more cushy shoes on asphalt, concrete versus trails. I'm curious about your perspectives on this, how these affect our bodies differently, and what's most effective.
Yeah, so generally speaking, shoes can be more firm, which is another way of saying responsive, meaning more energy return, meaning that whenever you hit the ground, that you don't sink into your shoe so much as the shoe propels you forward. The other way to go about it is a shoe that is softer or a shoe that is less responsive, a shoe that absorbs more shock in the shoe, therefore has decreased energy return. It's two completely different preferences. I know a lot of people will prefer more firm, responsive shoes when engaged in like a high intensity speed workout or a race or something where maybe energy return is more sought after, I guess. When a lot of people will do most of their training in a softer shoe, something that absorbs more stress, more vibration, decreasing the amount of stress that the body has to endure. Really, in the end, it's complete personal preference. Some people like responsive shoes, some people like softer shoes. You just have to do what feels good. You don't want to go to your shoe selection in your closet and get ready to pull out some really hard shoes and you're like, man, this sucks, I don't want to wear these shoes. Like, just, you need to want to put your shoes on. You need to want them to be comfortable so that you want to put them on, you want to lace them up, you want to get outside and do your thing. But generally speaking, those are kind of what you're looking for, is shoes that are comfortable. Really, there's not a lot of like a ton of science behind it. It's really simple. I know that a lot of people right now in the industry, so to speak, like the footwear running industry, you're starting to see Hoka and Ultra and a variety of different brands. Nike make really big, soft cushion shoes. And they're very popular right now because the shoes are not only comfortable, but they seem to absorb a lot of that impact, a lot of that stress. And so people's bodies are feeling better, especially over longer distances. People that have had issues with, I guess, knee surgeries or spinal fusion surgeries or all kinds of issues, going into a Hoka or something like that, and then being like, you know what, like, I can run again. Running doesn't suck as much as it used to suck. Like, I think that I can get into this. And so if you've had an injury in the past that stopped you from running specifically, because running is so stressful on your body, the pounding is just not conducive to what you're wanting to do, you might look into something that is bigger, softer, that absorbs more impact. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think it's important too to take into account the surfaces you're going to be running on the most. So I have a pair of road shoes and I have a pair of trail shoes, and I don't wear my trail shoes on the road, and I try not to use my road shoes on the trail because typically trail shoes are a lot stiffer. And it's easier to get injured if you're running in a stiff, hard, not as cushioned shoe on the road. I've had some friends who have done, you know, some road trips and they only had a pair of trail shoes, and, you know, 3-4 days after running long distances on the roads in trail shoes ended up in an inevitable injury. So I think just being cognizant of that. And I know that typically in the winters when I'm running on roads more, I'll switch into a Hoka or a Pegasus, a Nike Pegasus or something, like Drew said, a little bit more comfortable. Just to, I don't know if it's peace of mind for me, but I think that there's definitely something to that. And just knowing that there's going to be enough cushion for all of the pounding I'm about to put my body through.
Yeah, Kristen, I really like the advice on athletes having a shoe for the roads and a shoe for the trails. I think for a lot of athletes, running on both roads and trails is very beneficial for developing economy and developing as a runner over the long term. And we can get into the specifics behind that on a different call. But something that I notice with shoes and the way that shoe technology is going is that actually some softer shoes are starting to have a foam in the sole that is quite responsive. So it's very nice on the body, but you also are starting to get some more energy return too. Yeah, I recently switched from wearing Hokas on the roads to wearing a Nike Pegasus on the road. And not only did that really help to clear up some lower leg issues I was having, but I feel like my workouts have gotten faster because that specific like foam that they're using has been soft but very responsive. Again, you know, surface types really make a difference. So like if you're running on softer trails, you know, sometimes a stiffer shoe is really nice for responsiveness, especially if it's technical. You want to be able to move your feet quickly and move from one step to another. You know, a stiffer trail shoe can be great there. But I've also seen a stiffer trail shoe have diminishing returns as well, especially like in more technical desert running where the athlete is running on a lot of slick rock and very firm surfaces over long races. Sometimes a softer shoe where the body isn't absorbing as much of that impact can be really, really helpful for kind of like keeping your feet from fatiguing, keeping your lower legs from getting overly sore. So maybe having a few kind of different types of shoes in your shoe quiver over time can be really helpful, and making those like those choices the day of based on the terrain you're getting out in or how your body's feeling. Like if I am feeling sore, I'm going to do a road run in soft shoes. I'm not going to go to a steep trail where I'm going to get more sore and put a stiff shoe on where my body is going to absorb more impact forces. I'm going to make an educated choice and say soft shoe, less vert, gentle recovery run in order to have a better training day the following day and to facilitate some recovery, give my body a break. I think as athletes, we've all done the other thing, which is like, screw the soreness, I'm putting on the stiff shoe and I'm going to try to fly anyways. Usually that leads to some injuries or niggles or just a tough mental toughness day.
Yeah.
So you could probably try to avoid that.
I think too, kind of going off of what TJ, what you're saying is that like when we ask our athletes to take the easy days easy, like this is also what we mean, you know, where it's like you have to take care of yourself. And so if a softer shoe is going to benefit you the next day, 2 days afterwards, like by all means use the softer shoe. I think that's super important. And I also think that to your point about running on different surfaces, like if you're going to be doing a race in Moab or in the desert that's predominantly on slick rock, that's not that different than running on pavement. So keeping those things in mind where you're going to want a softer shoe, you're going to want a softer, grippier shoe if it's wet or if it's icy or if it's, whatever. So I think there are so many different kinds of shoes that work in different environments. So just really doing your research, talking to the local running company guy, seeing what their advice is, and just keeping comfort in mind, because if you're going to be doing longer distances, you don't want your feet to become the number one problem.
What you're hearing from coaches too is that everyone needs multiple pairs of shoes, right? So don't just have like a Brooks Ghost, then do all your trail, all your road in the one pair of shoes and break it down in 3 months until you're hurting yourself. Like there needs to be trail options and road options in your closet. And even then you might even consider, if you can afford it, having maybe a couple road options, maybe a couple trail options. So you can rotate shoes depending on the surfaces, like Kristen and TJ are talking about.
Yeah, I used to do all my runs in trail shoes, and over many years changed that gradually and built up a little quiver of shoes that really work for me. And I think that that's something that all athletes can kind of like aspire to do over many months and years, kind of build out that quiver, have a recovery shoe, have that road shoe. And it's good. And I want people to also move away from like the stigma of like shoes with cushion being like for people who aren't runners, and shoes that are soft for people who are not runners. Smart runners use the appropriate shoe on the appropriate day. And there's no stigma behind that. If you're not, if you're out there running in sandals or zero drop shoes, I actually think that that's probably a really poor choice and not the more pure running choice. Put some support under those feet and baby those feet, because they're going to take you a long way if you are healthy.
Yeah, I think too, if you have the ability to have multiple shoes, like multiple options for road shoes, multiple options for trail shoes, it's important not to get hyper focused on one brand. Like if you like Nikes, cool, that's great. If you like Salomon's, awesome, that's great. You can run in both. And the way that they're structured, like the way the footwear developers design the shoe is to like strengthen your feet. So if you're switching from a road shoe to a trail shoe every other day, or one road shoe to another road shoe, like that's just going to strengthen the muscles in your feet that will be beneficial later on.
Yeah, I would agree. You don't need to be married to one specific brand. I'm sponsored by Dynafit. I run in other shoes when it's necessary. You guys should also switch it up. It's very important. I know that not everybody can afford multiple pairs of shoes, but think of it as like a small investment. It's a couple dollars a day that keep your feet happy from, for 250 to 350 miles, depending on the brand of shoe. Drew, did you want the final word on this before we wrap it up?
Oh, no, not necessarily. I think everyone finds out what works for them and they go for it. If for whatever reason anybody does have any questions when it comes time to invest in your next pair of footwear, please feel free to reach out to me or, of course, the coaches. We're all pretty experienced shoe lovers. And so whenever you don't take shots in the dark, I guess is what I'm saying. Sometimes people get online and be like, well, this Google review says that ... It's just, listen, talk to us. We're real people. We're real runners. And if you need advice, reach out to the Microcosm community.
Yeah, I love that. Well, awesome. Yeah. Thanks guys. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. We are not going to have a call this coming Monday. So I hope you guys all enjoy an afternoon to yourselves. And we will do our best to do another Coach's Corner 1 week from today. Yeah, assuming we can get all the coaches on board with that, and we'll take it from there. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Get some adventuring in. That's what I'm gonna do on my couch with the second vaccine in me. Bye guys. Take care.